This line chart tracks foreign children adopted by American families. Look at 2004. In that single year, Americans brought home exactly 22,988 kids. Over the next 2 decades, that number fell by 95%, dropping to just 1,172 by 2024. This collapse was a deliberate country-by-country dismantling of the system. The system traces its roots back to the aftermath of the Korean War. When a surge of orphans and mixed-race children were left behind, it established the foundation for modern international adoption. Central to this was the proxy adoption, a legal mechanism where American parents could adopt a Korean child sight unseen. It created a streamlined mass rescue pipeline across the entire ocean. This Cold War origin locked in the American perspective for the next 50 years. International adoption was a humanitarian effort where affluent nations saved desperate orphans. That narrative fractured in December 2012. Russia, the second largest source of children for American families, abruptly stopped all adoptions to the U.S. The mechanism was the Dima Yakovlev Law, which banned American citizens from adopting Russian children overnight. The ban was a direct retaliatory countermeasure. It targeted the U.S. Magnitsky Act, which had sanctioned Russian officials for human rights abuses following the death of Sergei Magnitsky. The Russian state explicitly weaponized the adoption system as a way to punish American lawmakers. The move sparked massive public protests in Moscow and left hundreds of in-process American families stranded in a legal limbo. The Russian ban pulled the adoption system into the center of a geopolitical fight, turning orphan children into bargaining chips between rival powers. Russia's ban was the loudest signal of a global shift. Sending nations increasingly viewed the export of their children as a humiliating symbol of state weakness. There were economic pressures, too. High U.S. demand and required cash donations created an incentive for local actors to manufacture orphans out of poor families who might have otherwise kept their children. Ethiopia instituted a total ban on foreign adoptions in 2018. The government cited national pride and a need to stop documented fraud within an unregulated supply chain. In August 2024, the largest adoption program in history ended when China abruptly closed its foreign adoption pipeline. Beijing shifted its framing from a humanitarian partnership to one of sovereign control and demographic necessity. For these nations, closing the pipeline was a reclamation of national dignity, a rejection of a Western-driven market that exported their citizens. While nations asserted their sovereignty, the actual human beings traded in this system began to speak for themselves. As they reached adulthood, thousands of adoptees encountered a legal blind spot, the citizenship gap. Many children brought to the U.S. were never officially naturalized by their adoptive parents. Adoptees like Adam Krapser and Philip Clay, who had lived in the U.S. since they were toddlers, were treated as undocumented immigrants and deported back to South Korea decades after their arrival. Those deportations coincided with new findings from South Korea's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The commission admitted to state-facilitated fraud, describing a child trade designed to avoid the cost of a domestic welfare state, even as the country hosted the Olympics and grew wealthy. For the sending state, foreign adoptions served as a budget shortcut, leaving thousands of adoptees without legal safety, identity, or belonging. The 50-year experiment in mass international adoption has largely come to an end. The system collapsed because it attempted to run a lucrative global market under the guise of humanitarian aid. And while the doors are now closing, the human beings produced by this system remain. Adult adoptees are now reclaiming their histories, reminding the world that human lives can never be treated simply as geopolitical exports.